I saved the family hotel, but they pushed me aside. I never thought that at 47 I would be standing in the lobby of my family's hotel, fighting for recognition in the very place I had spent my life saving. But here I was. Right in front of me was a large sign announcing tonight's important meeting. A meeting I was supposed to lead. Instead, my parents had made a different decision. A decision that, when I heard it, left me completely stunned. "Lucy, your father and I have thought this through. And we've decided to give the hotel's management to Brian." I blinked, unable to believe what I had just heard. My heart pounded as if someone had just ripped away everything I had poured my sweat, tears, and money into. Brian, my younger brother, who had never worked a serious day in his life, who only showed up here when he needed money or wanted to feel important, was now the one chosen to lead? I am Lucy Evans, a hospitality management expert with nearly 20 years of experience. I once managed a luxury hotel chain in Seattle, where I spent my youth climbing the corporate ladder. I loved my job, the precision of it, the satisfaction of providing guests with a perfect experience. But 8 months ago, I gave it all up to return home and save my family's hotel, Maplewood Inn, from the brink of bankruptcy. This hotel was not just a building or a business to me. It was my childhood. It was where I grew up, where I sat at the front desk watching my mother check reservations, where I followed my father around learning how to fix a leaking pipe. I loved this hotel as if it were a part of me. But Brian, he never cared. While I dedicated my youth to studying hospitality management, he jumped from one major to another: graphic design, real estate, and finally, nothing. He drifted around the city, dabbling in half-baked business ventures, then abandoning them halfway. Yet when my father called me 8 months ago, his voice filled with panic, saying that Maplewood Inn was about to collapse, I didn't think twice. I sold my condo in Seattle, withdrew my entire savings, and returned home to Montana to save the hotel. And I did. When I came back, the hotel looked like a relic of the past. Outdated interiors, an old reservation system, and patchy service. The reviews on travel websites were filled with 1-star ratings and disappointed comments. I dove into work immediately. I revamped the entire management system, improved customer service, and partnered with travel bloggers to promote the hotel. I worked 16-hour days, without weekends off. Every penny I earned went into the hotel. New carpets, upgraded rooms, improved restaurant menus. In just 6 months, the hotel was alive again. Online ratings soared, bookings doubled, and for the first time in years, revenue turned a profit. And now, after everything, my parents were telling me I wasn't the right person to lead? Brian stood next to my mother, arms crossed, with a smug half-smile on his face. "Don't get so worked up, Lucy," he said arrogantly. "Someone still has to handle the day-to-day details, and you're great at that. But this hotel needs a bigger vision. And that's where I come in." I laughed, not because any of this was funny, but because I was trying to hold back my rage. My parents looked at me as if I were an overreacting child. "You're too rational, Lucy," my mother said softly, as if trying to soothe me. "You're great at operations, but leading a hotel isn't just about numbers. You need to trust your instincts, and Brian has that." I looked at them, then around at the hotel, the place I had poured my heart and soul into saving. And I realized one thing. To them, I had never been the first choice. 8 months ago, when I first stepped into the main lobby of Maplewood Inn, I barely recognized it. A hotel that was once the pride of our family now looked like an abandoned building. The carpets were frayed, the old sofas smelled of mildew, and the ceiling lights flickered as if ready to die out at any moment. The front desk was still using an outdated reservation system from over a decade ago, and the staff looked unmotivated, moving sluggishly through their shifts. I remember gripping the front desk, taking a deep breath, and telling myself, "I can fix this, I will save this hotel." And I got to work. The first thing I tackled was the most obvious issue: the reservation system and the interiors. I knew that if Maplewood Inn wanted to survive in this competitive market, we had to modernize. I spent most of my savings replacing the outdated reservation system with a modern software that integrated with online booking platforms like Expedia and Booking.com. I personally trained the staff to ensure they fully understood the new process. Next, I renovated the main lobby. I hired a local team to install new carpets, repaint the walls with warm, inviting tones, and replace the old furniture with stylish yet cozy pieces. I collaborated with local artists to display Montana landscape paintings, giving Maplewood Inn a unique regional identity. These changes weren't easy or quick. Some nights I slept in my office, staying up late to check every detail, from the fabric of the bedsheets to the lighting in the rooms. I worked 16-hour days, grabbing quick meals in between renovation plans. But I didn't complain. I knew I was doing the right thing. The hotel staff initially looked at me with skepticism. They were used to the old ways, where laziness and carelessness had become the norm. But I refused to let that continue. I organized customer service training sessions, insisting that staff greet guests with genuine smiles instead of robotic greetings. I taught them how to solve problems rather than passing them off. Some of the longtime employees resisted, but I didn't back down. Those who refused to adapt, I let go. Those who stayed gradually realized that I wasn't just another family member, I was a real leader. One employee who stood out was Maria, the head of housekeeping, who had worked here for over 15 years. At first she was wary of me, but when she saw my dedication and genuine care for the hotel, she became one of my strongest allies. "You really want to change this place?" Maria told me one afternoon during a break. "It's been a long time since someone actually cared about Maplewood Inn." I smiled. "Because I believe this place deserves another chance." Beyond renovating the interiors and training the staff, I focused on rebranding Maplewood Inn. I worked with travel bloggers, inviting them to experience the new and improved hotel and write reviews. I invested in a professional website where guests could easily book rooms and see the best features of the hotel. I partnered with local tour companies to list Maplewood Inn as a prime lodging option in Montana. Within just 3 months, the results were undeniable. Bookings increased by 40%, and for the first time in years, the hotel became profitable again. The negative reviews were replaced by glowing recommendations. Excellent customer service, friendly and attentive staff. The newly designed rooms are so cozy, it feels like a luxury resort. Delicious breakfast, and I love that they use local ingredients. I had proven that Maplewood Inn could not only recover, but also compete with other hotels in the area. I did all of this without Brian, my brother, who only showed up a few days a month, spouting grand ideas before disappearing again. And yet, now that the hotel had finally turned around, my parents were telling me I wasn't fit to lead. As I stood there, listening to them announce Brian as the new head, it felt like a punch to the chest. Were they really so blind that they couldn't see everything I had done? But there was one thing I knew for sure. I had worked a miracle once, and I could do it again. But this time, I wouldn't do it for them. I sat silently in my office, the warm yellow light casting a glow on the wall where I had hung charts tracking Maplewood Inn's growth. The numbers spoke for themselves: soaring profits, record-high bookings, and customer ratings better than ever. But now? All my efforts meant nothing because of a decision I had never even been consulted on. Brian, my younger brother, had just been appointed to lead the hotel. What angered me wasn't just being pushed aside, it was the realization that my parents had never intended to give me control in the first place. Even after I had sold my condo, left behind a stable career in Seattle, and spent nearly a year saving the hotel, they still didn't see me as worthy. Maybe it would have been easier to accept if Brian were actually competent. But he wasn't. He had never managed a business for more than 3 months. He bounced from one venture to another, throwing money at ridiculous ideas before abandoning them. And yet, here he was, strolling into the hotel with a smug expression, as if he had won a competition I didn't even know I was in. "Relax, Lucy." Brian patted my shoulder, his tone the same one you'd use to calm a child. "You'll still be the one running things day to day. I'll handle the big picture, and you can focus on the little details. I clenched my jaw. Little details? Did he even realize that those so-called little details were what saved this hotel from bankruptcy? Did he know that I had spent countless nights sitting with Maria, planning every aspect of housekeeping, reading every customer review to find areas for improvement? No, he didn't. And he didn't care. After that meeting, I went to talk to my parents. I didn't yell or cry. I just wanted a reasonable explanation. You need to understand, Lucy, my mother said, her voice gentle but firm. Brian has a bigger vision. He's going to take this hotel to the next level. A vision? I let out a bitter laugh. The only vision Brian had was turning the hotel lobby into a bar, transforming Maplewood Inn from a peaceful retreat into a party hub. Do you really believe he can run this hotel? I asked, trying to keep my composure. I did everything to save this place. If it weren't for me, Maplewood Inn would have been repossessed by the bank months ago. My father sat silently, staring into his coffee as if it could shield him from this conversation. My mother shook her head, as if she was trying to get me to understand something obvious. You're incredible, Lucy, but you're too rigid. A hotel isn't just about numbers, it's about atmosphere, about branding. And Brian has that instinct. I laughed. Unbelievable. So what am I, a bookkeeping robot? No one answered, and their silence hurt more than any words ever could. I walked out of the meeting room, feeling betrayed by the very people who should have valued me the most. As I passed through the hallway, I saw Maria standing there, her eyes filled with concern. She had heard everything. Are you okay? Maria asked softly. I wanted to say I was fine, that this didn't bother me. But I couldn't lie to myself. No, Maria, I sighed, but I will be. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking. I had done everything possible to prove my worth, yet to them, I was still nothing more than a shadow behind Brian. And I knew that if I stayed, if I kept trying to make them see my value, I would only keep hurting myself. I had saved Maplewood Inn once. But if they couldn't appreciate what I had done, maybe it was time to put my energy into something entirely new. Not for them, for myself and my own future. I didn't leave Maplewood Inn right away. A part of me still wanted to see if my parents would realize their mistake. But as the days passed, I saw that they wouldn't. Brian took over with an air of arrogance, treating everything I had built as nothing more than a stepping stone for his vision. He started making terrible decisions, cutting maintenance costs, removing key amenities and turning the hotel into more of a party venue than a high-end retreat. The staff was confused, guests started complaining, but my parents remained blind to it all, convinced Brian would succeed. I knew I couldn't stay any longer. I realized it one afternoon when I took a drive just to clear my head. As I wound my way through the outskirts of town, I suddenly stopped in front of an old but promising building. Silver Creek Lodge. It had once been a well-known hotel in the area, but over the years, it had fallen into decline. The previous owner couldn't compete with newer establishments and eventually put it up for sale. But its location was perfect, right near the ski slopes, with breathtaking views of the Rockies. If renovated properly, it could become one of the top luxury lodges in the region. I sat in my car, staring at the for sale sign in front of the building. And at that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I had revived Maplewood Inn from ruins, but my family didn't appreciate it. So why not do it for myself? Right then and there, I called an old friend, Jake Carter, a real estate expert I had worked with in the hospitality industry. I asked him about Silver Creek Lodge, and within an hour, I had a meeting scheduled with the owner for the next day. I didn't tell my family about my plans. I knew they would only try to stop me or worse, mock me. With my remaining savings and a bank loan, I purchased Silver Creek Lodge within a month. Signing the contract felt like the biggest relief of my life. No more being tied down by my parents, no more seeking their validation. This was my chance to build something entirely my own. I got to work immediately. Silver Creek Lodge needed a massive overhaul from plumbing to interior design, But I didn't feel overwhelmed or exhausted. For the first time in years, I was working for myself. I called Maria, the former head of housekeeping at Maplewood Inn, and asked if she wanted to join me. She didn't hesitate for long. "I'm sick of the way Brian runs that place," Maria said. "I want to work for someone who actually knows what they're doing." Before long, other staff members left Maplewood Inn to join me. They had seen firsthand who the real leader was, and they trusted me. I renamed the hotel Summit Lodge, a name that symbolized more than just the mountain peaks. It represented the pinnacle of my journey. I was no longer working to gain my family's approval. I was working to build my own future. News of my purchase of Silver Creek Lodge spread quickly throughout town. Some people supported me, while others gossiped that I was trying to destroy my own family. And then, just as I expected, my parents found out. My mother called the moment the news broke. Her voice was filled with irritation. "Lucy, what are you doing? Opening a competing hotel against your own family?" I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "It's not competition, Mom," I replied calmly. "I'm just doing what's right for myself." "You're betraying the family," she shouted. I let out a quiet laugh. How ironic, considering they were the ones who betrayed me first. "If that's what you think, then so be it," I said and hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for standing up for myself. Summit Lodge wasn't just a hotel. It was a symbol of my freedom, of everything I had learned after years of trying to earn the approval of people who never truly valued me. I had once saved a hotel for my family. Now, I would build an empire for myself. Rumors about my departure from Maplewood Inn and the opening of Summit Lodge spread even faster than I had anticipated. Some in town called me a traitor to my family, while others looked at me with admiration. But no matter what they thought, I didn't care. I focused on my work. While my new team and I poured all our energy into renovating Summit Lodge, I kept an eye on Maplewood Inn from a distance, and I wasn't surprised to see it rapidly declining. Within just 3 months of my departure, Brian had destroyed almost everything I had built. He thought he was smarter than me, that he had a big vision, but the reality was, he had no plan at all, other than cutting costs and making reckless decisions. He eliminated the complimentary breakfast, which had been a major selling point for the hotel, leading to a significant drop in returning guests. He fired Maria, the longtime head of housekeeping, claiming she was inflexible with scheduling. He then hired a new staff at lower wages, but the result was a flood of complaints about poor cleanliness and sloppy service. He slashed maintenance expenses, leading to a broken hot water system in the middle of winter that took over a week to fix. The outcome? A wave of negative reviews on travel sites, angry guests, and a sharp decline in bookings. I heard all of this from my former employees, the ones who had left Maplewood Inn to work with me at Summit Lodge. They told me Brian frequently showed up late, rarely involved himself in the hotel's operations, but had plenty of time to throw extravagant parties with his friends in the lobby. Every time I heard updates about Maplewood Inn, I just shook my head. I didn't take pleasure in watching it crumble. After all, it had once been my home. But I didn't feel guilty either. This was the inevitable result of putting an unqualified person in charge. What was once a rapidly recovering hotel under my management was now spiraling downward. Travel site ratings plummeted. Loyal guests never returned. Revenue took a severe hit. Then, in the 5th month after I left, the biggest news broke. The bank had issued a foreclosure warning on Maplewood Inn's loan. I could almost picture my parents' panic when they received the letter. They had never truly understood how to run a business. When I was there, I carefully managed the finances, reinvesting profits to ensure long-term stability. But Brian was different. He spent recklessly, pouring money into things that didn't add value, and when the real problems hit, he had no plan to fix them. I knew just how desperate my parents were when, one morning, my phone rang. My mother's name lit up on the screen. I didn't answer right away. I let it ring until it stopped, then sat there, staring at my phone in silence. I knew what they wanted, They wanted me to come back and clean up the mess they had made. But I wasn't the same Lucy anymore. I wasn't their fixer. A few hours later, my mother left a voicemail. "Lucy, I know you're upset. But the hotel is in trouble. Brian needs you. We need you. Please call me back." I smirked. When they needed me, I was Lucy, the one who could save the hotel. When they didn't, I was just the overly rational, rigid daughter. I let the silence stretch for days. Then, my father called. His tone was more serious, wearier. "Lucy, I won't beat around the bush. The bank is going to foreclose on the loan if we don't find a solution. Brian can't handle it. Can you help?" I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. No apology, no admission of their mistake. They just wanted me back to save them. Just like before. But this time, I wouldn't. I picked up my phone and called him back. He answered immediately. "I'm not coming back," I said firmly. "But if you need advice, I can give you the names of some hotel consultants who might be able to help." A long silence followed. Then, he sighed. "I see." I didn't know if he truly understood. But it didn't matter anymore. I was on my own path now. And this time, I would build something greater than my family ever had. 3 days after my father's call, I received a text from my mother. It wasn't long or desperate like the previous messages. This time, she simply wrote, "Lucy, come to dinner with us. We need to talk as a family." I hesitated. Part of me knew this wasn't just an invitation. But, in the end, I decided to go. Not because I believed they had changed, but because I wanted to look them in the eye and finally say what I had been holding back for years. I arrived at my parents' house at 7 p.m. The moment I stepped inside, I could feel the tension in the air. The dinner table was set, but no one seemed to have the appetite to eat. My mother was the first to speak. "Lucy, I know the past few months haven't been easy for you. But we're family. And family is supposed to help each other." I set down my fork and knife and looked directly at her. "You're right, but when I needed recognition, did you help me?" She froze. I continued, my voice calm but firm. "I saved Maplewood Inn. I did everything to keep it from going under. But instead of acknowledging that, you and Dad handed it over to Brian, the one person who had never taken anything seriously in his life. And now that it's falling apart, you want me back?" My father cleared his throat, maybe in an attempt to break the tension. "Lucy, your father and I may have underestimated you. But this hotel is our family's legacy. We can't let it go." I let out a dry laugh. "Really? When I was there, you didn't worry about its future. But now, when it's on the brink of collapse, you suddenly want me to step in and save it?" My mother placed her hands on the table, her eyes pleading. "We can fix this, Lucy. You just need to come back and do what you do best. Help Brian understand how to run the hotel. Think about the family legacy, sweetheart." I took a deep breath. No. Just one word, but it landed like a slap across the room. My mother's eyes widened as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. "Lucy, you can't say that." "I absolutely can," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "I did it once, and you didn't appreciate it. Now that the hotel is falling apart under Brian's poor leadership, I won't come back to clean up his mess." My father leaned back in his chair and sighed. "So you're really going to let Maplewood Inn fall into the bank's hands?" I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not the one letting it go. Brian and you did that. And I'm not responsible for it." Silence filled the room. Finally I spoke again. "If you truly want to save the hotel, I can recommend some hospitality consultants. But I won't come back. This is no longer my problem." My mother looked at me as if she didn't recognize me anymore. "You've really changed, Lucy." I smiled faintly. "No, Mom. I've just learned to put myself above everyone else's expectations." That night, I walked out of my parents' house without guilt or regret. For the first time in my life, I had drawn a clear boundary. I had spent my whole life seeking my parents' approval, trying to prove I was worthy. But now, I realized, I didn't need their validation anymore. I had Summit Lodge, a hotel I had built with my own hands, where every brick, every detail carried my mark. I had a team of incredible employees who believed in me and stood by my side. I had forged my own path, and I had no regrets. They could call me heartless, they could say I was cold, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free, and I was no longer wasting my efforts on people who didn't deserve them. Less than a year after I left Maplewood Inn and started my own journey, Summit Lodge became one of the fastest-growing boutique hotels in the region. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving. With a dedicated team and a clear vision, Summit Lodge quickly achieved record-breaking occupancy rates. We were highly rated by travel bloggers, featured in prestigious hospitality magazines, and praised by loyal guests. Meanwhile, Maplewood Inn was sinking. Under Bryant's management, the hotel continued to struggle. After I refused to return, my parents were forced to hire a hospitality consultant, something they should have done from the start. But it was too late. The hotel's reputation had suffered too much damage, and no matter what they did, they couldn't restore it to its former glory. I didn't feel triumphant over Maplewood Inn's downfall, I only felt pity. Pity that they had a chance to save it but threw it away because of their pride and favoritism. Then one day I received an email from the National Hotel Association. Summit Lodge had been nominated for Boutique Hotel of the Year, a prestigious award given to the best independent hotel in the region. I couldn't believe my eyes. The project I had poured my heart and soul into, the dream I had built from the ground up, was now being recognized on a national stage. As I stood on that stage accepting the award, looking out at a room filled with business leaders, industry experts, and journalists, I felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. I had done it. Without my parents' help, without their approval, I had risen on my own. And then, I saw them. My parents sat in the far back row. They didn't congratulate me, they didn't approach me. But their eyes said it all. They understood. They understood that I didn't need them to succeed. They understood that they had lost a true leader because of their own biases. They understood that they had been wrong. But I didn't need an apology. I didn't need them to admit it out loud. Their silence was the clearest acknowledgement of all. That night, I didn't go looking for them. I didn't need an awkward conversation or a late apology. Instead, I celebrated with my team. The people who had believed in me from the very beginning, the ones who stood by me through every hardship to achieve this success. I had once craved my parents' approval, desperate to be recognized. But now, I realized I had never truly needed it. I was no longer living in the shadow of Maplewood Inn. I was standing at the summit of my own success, and that was all that mattered. That night, after the celebration ended, I returned to my hotel room, standing by the window, gazing at the city lights. I had achieved everything I wanted: success, freedom, and most importantly, the self-education I had once sought from my family. But deep inside, there was still something unfinished. Maybe I still had a connection to Maplewood Inn. Maybe, despite everything my family had done, I couldn't completely turn my back on them. 2 days after the award ceremony, I drove back to town and stopped by Maplewood Inn. It was no longer the bustling place it used to be. The lobby was empty, the front desk lacked energy, and there were only a few scattered guests. I could see the signs of decline. The withered plants at the entrance, the worn-out chairs in the lobby. Inside the office, my parents and Brian sat with worried expressions, staring at financial reports. When I stepped in, they looked up, startled, as if they couldn't believe their eyes. "Lucy." My mother was the first to speak, her voice hesitant. I looked around, taking a deep breath. "I'll help," I said. "But this time, I do it my way. No favoritism, no irrational decisions. If this family wants to save Maplewood Inn, you have to accept that I will be the one in charge." All three of them stared at me in shock. Brian started to speak, but my father raised a hand to stop him. He looked at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "We need you, Lucy." My mother reached for my hand, her eyes glistening. Thank you, sweetheart. For the first time in years, I felt like they truly respected my decision. I didn't waste any time getting to work. With the experience I had gained from Summit Lodge, I knew exactly what needed to be done to bring Maplewood Inn back to its former glory. I restructured the staff, brought back the best employees, improved customer service, and invested in strategic marketing. This time Brian, no longer as arrogant as before, sat down, listened and learned from his past mistakes. My parents no longer interfered in business decisions. They let me work freely, and over time, they learned to trust me. 3 months later, Maplewood Inn began to recover. Bookings increased, positive reviews slowly reappeared on travel websites, and the hotel regained its energy and charm. One afternoon, while I was checking the lobby, my mother approached me and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "Lucy, I'm sorry." I turned to look at her. "For not believing in you, for not seeing what you've done for this family." I was silent for a moment, then smiled softly. "I used to be angry at you. But now, I understand that sometimes, people only realize the value of something when they nearly lose it." She squeezed my hand, and for the first time in years, I felt truly close to her. After Maplewood Inn stabilized, I continued managing both hotels, Summit Lodge and Maplewood Inn. Each had its own unique style, but both carried my mark. Brian finally learned what it meant to truly work. He was no longer the irresponsible younger brother, but was becoming a reliable business partner. My family, despite all the hurt and misunderstandings, slowly found its way back together. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I truly had it all: success, freedom, and a family I once thought I had lost. Lucy's story is not just about rebuilding a hotel, it's about reclaiming her self-worth. It reflects a truth that many of us face: that sometimes the people closest to us fail to see our efforts and talents until we step out of their shadow and succeed on our own. Lucy proved that recognition doesn't come from pleasing others, but from staying true to oneself. In the end, she not only secured her rightful place, but also held on to the family she thought she had lost. What do you think about Lucy's journey? Have you ever found yourself in a similar situation, overlooked and undervalued despite giving your all? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about life and family. My name is Nora Bennett, 36 years old, Vice President of Strategy at a tech corporation headquartered in Denver. To my colleagues, I'm the embodiment of decisiveness and strength, the only woman on the executive board whose flipped deals everyone thought were impossible. But to my family, all of that might as well be a clumsy joke. That afternoon, while reviewing numbers for an upcoming shareholder meeting, I received an email from my sister, Allison. The subject line was simple: Reunion 2025, save the date. But I knew I wasn't the intended audience. The email looked like it was sent to everyone, yet the content didn't mention me once. "No, Nora, hope you'll make it last year." Or, "Don't forget the quiche you brought last year." I stared at the screen. This year it was once again the cabin at Lake Arrowhead. Memories flooded in. Pine-scented wood stoves, morning canoe rides, and laughter echoing from the living room. A room I was never around long enough to be part of. I used to love that place like I loved my childhood. Until I learned silence. My mother, Evelyn, was a master at making people feel small without saying a cruel word. She didn't have to raise her voice to make me feel out of place. Just a sideways glance. A clipped sigh followed by, "Oh, Nora's not coming again? So busy with her work she has no time for family." When I was younger, I didn't understand why every summer I was encouraged to stay and help her clean the kitchen while Allison went fishing with Dad and my brother, Zachary, got to steer the brand new canoe. I used to think it was a coincidence. I later learned it was casting. And my role was the responsible child. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend. "Haley, let me guess, another reunion email?" I replied, "Nailed it. Seconds later, my phone rang. Caller ID, Mom. Right on schedule. I picked up. Her voice was syrupy sweet. Nora, darling, about this year's reunion. No need to explain, Mom, I cut in, keeping my voice neutral. Let me guess. Too many guests, not enough rooms, or maybe Allison's kids need space. Or Zach is bringing his new girlfriend? Silence. Then, after a pause, well, Allison is going through a delicate time. And Zach just had a breakup. We don't want anyone feeling uncomfortable. I understand, I replied, my eyes drifting to the merger agreement on my desk. Of course. I ended the call. No swearing, no tears. I just sat there, gripping the black signing pen next to the financial plan I was presenting to the board the next day. I thought about the awards on my office wall. A master's from Stanford. Top Young Strategist of the Year, from the National Investment Council. A gold watch, personally presented by our CEO. All of it meant nothing in my family's world. To them, success wasn't in data or strategy. It was Allison having 2 well-behaved kids. Or Zach landing a baseball scholarship. Even though he dropped out and now runs an auto shop outside Spokane. I could buy that shop in cash if I wanted. But I never brag. Because I know no matter what I do, in this family, I'll always be the one they just don't quite get. Or, more accurately, never bother to try. I opened the window. Cold wind rushed in, scattering papers off the desk. I stood up, staring toward the horizon where sunset fell across the distant mountain range. Something in me shifted. Not anger. A clarity. Undeniable and steady. It was time to rewrite my role, not for approval, but to make one thing absolutely clear. I was never just a shadow. They'd just never had enough light to see me. I poured another cup of coffee and stood by the window of my penthouse apartment, gazing down at the golden-lit streets of Denver. My mind kept looping back to a familiar scene. The kitchen one summer when I was 12. Allison had gone fishing with Dad and some important business guests. Zach was running around the yard in a brand new sports outfit. And me? I was in the kitchen, standing on a stool, reaching the high shelf to polish the crystal glasses Mom treated like crown jewels. I didn't protest. I even told myself I was being helpful. I still remember asking Mom if I could go down to the beach that afternoon. She didn't look at me, just said, "Someone has to keep the house in order, Nora." Too soft to be a rejection, yet cold enough to close every door. I nodded. I always nodded. In the summers that followed, my role never changed. The one who cooked, the one who cleaned, the one who helped wrap Christmas gifts while Allison practiced her college speeches and Zach went with Dad to training camp in San Diego. I used to think that if I were good enough, quiet enough, useful enough, one day they'd notice me. But the older I got, the smaller that hope became. And when I walked across the stage with an honors MBA from Stanford, without a single family member in the audience, I knew nothing I achieved would ever be enough for them. Because they never wanted to see me in the first place. The elevator ping snapped me out of my thoughts. Haley walked in, holding 2 Thai takeout boxes and a bottle of my favorite white wine. She stepped across the polished wood floor, nudged aside a stack of documents with her foot, and grinned. "Still torturing yourself over that damn email?" I didn't respond. Haley knew me too well. She set the food down, uncorked the wine, and continued. "Nora, it's time you stop letting them dictate how you feel. Whether they invite you or not doesn't change the fact you're the only successful one in that entire bunch. They just can't see it, because they don't want to." I sank onto the couch, swirling my wine. It's not about being invited. I just want, for once, to feel like part of the family. Haley leaned back, studying me. "Then you need a plan, not to make them regret it, but to make them unable to ignore you anymore." I gave a dry laugh. How do I make people acknowledge me when they don't even know what I do? Then show them. Every detail, every achievement, every brick you've laid to build the life they pretended didn't exist. I went silent. A plan, not for revenge, but to flip the rules of a game they wrote without me? So where do we start? I asked, voice steadier now. Haley raised an eyebrow, reaching into her bag for her iPad. Now we're talking. Okay, you said that lake house is in foreclosure, right? I nodded. Have you checked the title records? Whose name is it under? My dad's. But last year he took out a second mortgage to cover my aunt's medical bills. The interest rate was brutal. Haley smirked. Then we've got an opening. Someone with your financial standing, plus your real estate knowledge from the Park Ridge project. You could take ownership cleanly and legally. I frowned. You're telling me to buy my family's house? No. I'm telling you to buy the property from the people who pushed you out. You're not stealing anything. You're rescuing a piece of your past. I stared at the iPad as Haley pulled up the public property database. Debt amounts. Foreclosure status. Tax history. It was all there, crystal clear. And then I saw something I didn't expect. The house had missed 3 consecutive payments. If nothing changed, it would be listed for auction within 3 months. I straightened in my seat. Send me the list of realtors in that area, and a lawyer who specializes in distressed property acquisitions. Haley grinned. You just switched into full Nora mode. I love it. I didn't smile, but inside me, something ignited. A quiet, burning resolve. 1 week after Haley pitched that wild idea, I sat in a law office on the 42nd floor of a financial building in downtown Denver. On the desk was a thick black folder titled, Private Property Transfer, Corporate Ownership, Legalization Documents. I had registered a limited liability company, called NB Acquisitions LLC, short for Nora Bennett. My attorney, Catherine Monroe, a woman in her early 50s with neatly pinned silver hair and a voice that never rose above mezzo piano, looked up from the paperwork. The bank has confirmed they're willing to sell for the outstanding loan balance plus a 5% penalty. If you sign today, we can transfer ownership within 10 business days. And I picked up the fountain pen. Do it. 2 words. 1 signature. And I had officially stepped into a space I had only been allowed to observe from the sidelines for the past 30 years. That same day, I received an email from the executive board. Appointment offer, Chief Executive Officer, Asia Pacific Division, HQ, Singapore and Hong Kong. The subject line made me freeze for a second, not because I was surprised, but because everything was unfolding so precisely it felt scripted. I immediately called Lance, the company's CEO and the quiet mentor who had backed me for a decade. When he picked up, I got right to the point. Can you confirm the appointment letter isn't a mistake? His laugh came through the line. Nora, nobody accidentally appoints the top growth performer for 3 consecutive quarters to lead our most critical region. Congratulations. I leaned back in my chair. When do I need to be there? 3 weeks. Tokyo Restructuring Summit. You'll be presenting the new integration roadmap to our partners in Japan, Korea, and China. Travel and agenda are all ready with your assistant. I stared out the window. Denver was glowing in the late afternoon sun. Yeah. If I don't tell my family about this, do you think they'll find out? He paused. Only when you're on the cover of Forbes. And honestly, that's probably when they'll finally believe it. I had my representative contact the bank and proceed with the acquisition exactly as planned. Everything was done through the company. Haley managed the entire renovation of the house, patching the roof, replacing rotted floorboards, installing a modern security system. I didn't sign a single contract under my own name. Every document went through NB Acquisitions, LLC. The lakeside cabin, once the sacred symbol of the Bennett family, was now legally mine. And none of them knew. Not Allison, Not Zach, and definitely not my mother. That weekend, I received a text from Allison. "Mom's asking if you'll come to this year's reunion. She says things will be different. What do you think?" I didn't reply. Not yet, anyway. Haley called me just before midnight. "The house is ready, lights are reconnected, plumbing's good, and the new kitchen looks incredible. Are you sure you still want to keep it secret?" I was stretched out on the sofa, feet propped up, swirling a glass of red wine in one hand. "Not yet. They need to see the result before they find out who made it happen." Haley chuckled. "You're the most dangerous person I know. Because you do everything beautifully. And legally." I ended the call and reopened the appointment email. In 3 weeks, I'd be standing on a stage in Tokyo in my new role. But first, I was going back to Lake Arrowhead. On the morning of the family reunion, I arrived at Lake Arrowhead at 7 a.m. None of them knew I was back, let alone that I was sitting in the newly renovated kitchen, now covered in cream marble. The same space that used to be my assigned dishwashing station at every past gathering. Now, it had motion sensor LED lights, an automatic espresso machine, and a built-in wine fridge. Every detail was handpicked by me. I wore a long-sleeved navy silk dress, hair pinned high, makeup soft but precise. Not overly formal, but enough to make sure no one mistook me for staff. The house smelled of cinnamon waffles and freshly brewed coffee. A calculated touch. I knew scent could stir memory faster than any word. At 10:24 a.m. my mother's SUV pulled into the driveway. I turned off the music and stepped toward the side window to watch. Allison got out first, carrying a bag of homemade cookies. Zach followed, hauling a case of bottled water. My mother carefully checked her purse, then walked around to the front steps, pulling out the spare key she'd guarded since 1999. I took a sip of coffee, walked slowly toward the front door, and waited. That familiar sound echoed, the key sliding into the lock. Click, click. Another attempt. Then silence. "Allison, the key's not turning. Are you sure that's the right one?" "This is the same key we've used for years," my mother muttered, irritation rising. A hesitant knock followed. I opened the door. The three of them froze. My mother's eyes went wide, her hand suspended mid-air. Allison's jaw dropped. Zach instinctively stepped back, like he wasn't sure he was at the right house. "Hi everyone," I smiled. "I'm guessing the old key doesn't work anymore." What's going on?" Allison asked first. "Why are you here?" I stepped aside, gesturing inward. "Come on in. My house is your house." Literally. No one moved. "You coming in, or should I send formal invitations?" My tone was light. They walked in, almost involuntarily. Zach's eyes scanned the living room. Newly polished hardwood floors. Artwork realigned perfectly. Brand new leather chairs, still smelling of fresh upholstery. "What the hell is this?" my mother whispered. "Who redid everything?" "You know who bought the house?" Zach asked Allison. "I thought the bank still had it." I set my coffee down, pulled out my phone and opened a PDF labeled deed_NB_acquisitions. I rotated the screen toward them. My mother squinted. "NB Acquisitions, what is that?" "It's the company I formed 3 months ago. Purpose: to buy this house from the bank. Paid the entire debt, completed a full renovation, transferred ownership, and now," I smiled, "this property legally belongs to Nora Bennett." She grabbed the phone, checking as if I might be joking. Allison took half a step back. Zach collapsed into the armchair. "You're kidding, right?" Allison asked. "I've never been more serious." I moved back toward the kitchen island. "Coffee?" "It's single agony in Colombian. Mom, you've always liked a stronger roast." My mother didn't respond, eyes locked on the documents. Zach looked up. "How did you even, afford all this?" "I worked," I said simply, pouring another cup. "While you all thought I was too busy to show up." I was building something solid enough to own not just a house, but the choice of who gets to walk inside it. Allison set the cookie bag down on the counter. How long have you been hiding this from us? Long enough to know that if I had said anything, none of you would have believed me. My mother sat down on a bar stool, visibly shaken. You? Really? Own it? I nodded. Everything's done. Legal, taxes, insurance, even the security system's brand new. You didn't notice the lock had changed? No one spoke for a while. The only sound was the soft tick of the wall clock. I tapped my phone screen. Oh, and one more thing. I've accepted a new role. Chief Executive Officer, Asia PCP Division. I'll be relocating to Hong Kong soon. Allison blinked. What? Zach stammered. Asia? Like, running an entire region? Exactly, I said with a calm smile. And, before I leave, I wanted to come back. To see how the place that once held my childhood memories feels now that it fully belongs to me, and no longer as a shadow to anyone else. My mother slowly pulled her hand from her coffee mug, eyes locked on something she could no longer deny. And now, I said quietly but firmly, we can begin again. If you're brave enough to get to know this version of Nora. I pulled open the kitchen drawer and took out a thick folder, placing it on the dining table in front of them. This is the total cost of the home renovation over the past 4 months. Allison glanced at the first page, where the amount was clearly printed. Total cost: $278,000.46. Zach swallowed hard. You spent nearly $300,000 to fix up this place? Exactly. I nodded, sitting down across from them. The plumbing was a disaster. The wiring barely passed code, and the roof was so rotted, one more storm could have brought it down. This place wasn't a memory anymore. It was a liability. My mother frowned. But why? Why you? Why did you do this? I looked her straight in the eyes. Because if I left it as it was, all the childhood memories would have rotted with the floors. But if I preserved it, on my terms, at least the memories wouldn't die under someone else's narrative. The room went still. Heavy. Allison stared at her hands. Zach turned away, as if hiding from a version of me he no longer recognized. I continued slowly. I didn't do this for revenge. Not to prove a point. I did it to affirm one thing, that what belongs to me, memories, pain, this house, is worth protecting, just not the old way anymore. My mother stayed quiet, twisting the old wedding ring on her finger, a habit I knew meant she was truly shaken. You've grown more than I ever realized. I didn't respond. That didn't need validation anymore. Allison spoke suddenly. Did you know I had to ask a friend to reprint the 1997 birthday photos? The originals were moldy. I looked at her. I found one of you carrying the cake, smiling at us. After you did everything that day. I never remembered you being there, until I saw that photo. I shrugged. That's why you didn't remember. Because to everyone my presence was never bright enough. But now no one can overlook you. Zach jumped in, still stunned. You're running an entire region. You bought the house without anyone knowing. You've made me rethink everything. I tilted my head. What do you mean? I signed up for an online finance management course. Canceled my last overused credit card? I don't want to keep living like a burden to this family. I was taken aback, not emotional, just surprised that Zach was the one to say it first. Allison looked at me. I turned down a full-time offer from my old firm. They've waited 6 months. I took an unpaid leave and moved to Reno to do legal work for the community for 3 months. I sat up. Seriously? She nodded. I think it's time I do something not just to make Mom proud, but something I can be proud of. I turned to Mom. And you? She blinked. I don't have anything to offer. But I can listen. If you're willing to talk. I leaned back, arms crossed. Good. Then here's the first thing you need to know. From this year forward, family reunions follow my schedule. All three of them stared at me. I'll host 1 year in the US, 1 year abroad. Next year is Hong Kong. I'll cover accommodations, if everyone has a passport and the right attitude. Zach nearly choked. Next year? In Asia? Exactly. I want you to see the world beyond your comfort zones. And if you want to stay part of this family, you'll need to learn how to adapt. Allison laughed. You're talking like you're rehiring the entire family. I smirked. I'm just setting new standards. The same ones I was once told I didn't meet will now be the minimum requirements. My mother slowly stood. If that's what you need to heal, I'm willing to follow. I stood too, looking at each of them. This isn't about healing. This is about rebuilding from the ground up. And I won't accept the same old mistakes. No one objected. And for the first time in years, I felt like the Bennett living room truly belonged to me, not because I was in charge, but because they had finally started to follow. The crystal chandeliers sparkled above the grand ballroom on the 5th floor of the Four Seasons in Santa Monica, casting soft reflections on the silver silk draping the dinner tables. A string quartet played gently in the background, flowing through the cool air laced with high-end perfume. I stood near the stage, champagne in hand, watching each of my family members walk in, eyes wide like they'd stepped into a world not meant for them. My mother wore a deep purple silk dress, her hair in a low bun, but her steps faltered as she took in the white leather chairs, the handwritten French menus, the imported silverware. Zach was in a suit, tie askew. Allison whispered something to her husband while scanning the spiral wine tower in the center of the room. I said nothing, just stepped forward, letting the sharp sound of my heels on marble pull their attention. Welcome to our first reunion under the new arrangement, I smiled, raising my glass. Arrangement or Nora's kingdom, Zach half joked, still clearly overwhelmed. Call it whatever you like, I shrugged. But at least in this space, you won't be sitting on plastic chairs eating cold rotisserie chicken while being talked over. Allison pulled out her chair, trying to maintain composure. Did you really organize all of this? Not just organized, I replied, pulling my iPad from my bag and opening the custom event invitation. I funded everything. 2-night accommodations, full dining, private transportation. The events team handling this is from the PR division of the company I run. My mother picked up the menu, eyes pausing at Wagyu beef. Japanese A5, truffle glaze. She set it down with a sigh. Nora, you don't have to put on a show like this. I leaned against the table, head tilted. You think this is about making an impression? Well, what else would it be? A luxury hotel, classical music, tuxedoed staff? No, Mom. My voice stayed low, but firm. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm simply showing you exactly who I am. Not the version this family imagined, but the reality you ignored for over 30 years. She looked around the room, clearly out of defenses. I kept going, my voice level. When I told you I got promoted, you said, as long as you're happy. But when Allison made partner, you popped champagne. When Zach opened his auto shop, you invited all your friends to support him. Me? No one ever asked what company I worked for, what title I held, not even what I did. Allison looked down. Zach sighed. My mother reached for her glass of water without looking up. Well, now everyone sees it, I continued, still calm. The things you once dismissed as exaggerations are now printed in Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and quarterly earnings reports. And suddenly, people care. Mom looked up, eyes red. You're right, I didn't see you clearly. But that doesn't mean I didn't love you. I smiled. Bitter, not cruel. Love is a verb, Mom, not a state of being. And love doesn't survive in neglect. She opened her mouth to speak, then stayed silent. I stood, lifted my glass, and looked each of them in the eye. I don't need your apologies. I don't need anyone's acceptance. But from now on, reunions will happen on my schedule. 1 year in the US, 1 year wherever I'm based. Show up if you can. If not, done. I'm done waiting. What about Christmas dinner? Allison asked quietly. I turned my head, eyes cold as the marble tabletop. It's already booked, Intercontinental Hong Kong. If you have a visa, RSVP by December 10th. Zach gave a short laugh, shaking his head. I've never seen anyone push their family out of their comfort zone by, booking a luxury international dinner. That's how I show love, I said plainly. I force them to evolve, if they want to come along. The music continued. I walked out to the balcony, champagne in hand, sea breeze catching my hair. A hand touched my shoulder. Mother. Nora, she said softly. Is there any chance that someday I could still be part of your life as a real mother? I stared out at the ocean. There's always a chance. But to earn it, you'll have to choose to become someone new. Someone who didn't spend 30 years overlooking her own daughter. She nodded slowly, without resistance. I understand. I turned away. No anger, no forgiveness, but no pain either. Simply this. I was no longer standing behind. And if they wanted to walk with me now, they'd have to learn how to keep up. That afternoon, as the party wound down and sunlight slanted through the windows of the 5th floor at the Four Seasons, my mother walked slowly toward me. I was standing alone near the white floral table, reviewing emails from the legal team in Hong Kong, when she stopped in front of me, holding something small wrapped in ivory velvet. I have something for you, she said softly, eyes avoiding mine. I looked up. What is it? She unfolded the cloth, revealing an old brass key. Its ridges worn, with a bit of white paint still stuck to the handle. The old lake house key. The one you asked to keep when you were 17, but I didn't give it to you. I stared at the tiny object in her hand. The world paused around us. Not because the key held any real utility. It didn't. But because it symbolized something I never had. Trust. I kept it all these years, she continued, voice trembling slightly. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I was afraid. If you walked out that door with this key in hand, I knew I'd never be able to control you again. I closed my hand gently. You never really had control of me. I know, she nodded, finally looking me in the eye. But I used to think that if I never fully acknowledged you, you'd eventually come back. Because you wanted love. I didn't understand. What you needed wasn't permission. I took a deep breath. Do you understand now? I'm trying. She extended the key to me. Not to reclaim the house. It's already yours. But to say, I'm ready to open a different door. If you're still willing to let me in. I held the key in my palm, fingers curling around the cool metal. Familiar but foreign. I said nothing for a long moment. Then I spoke, voice low but steady. If you want to be in my life again, you'll have to walk in on new ground. Not the one that skipped over me during every reunion. Not with the eyes that skimmed over my milestones like they were grocery lists. But with a heart patient enough to listen, to learn, and to accept. She nodded. I'll try. Not because I'm asking for forgiveness, but because I don't want to live one more day inside the silence I helped create. I slipped the key into my pocket and looked back at her. Then you have one chance, just one, and it won't come again. A week later, I stood at the window of LAX, watching the red-tailed jet taxi toward the runway. My bags were checked, my boarding pass had been scanned. The future ahead of me was mapped out like any solid strategy I'd ever built. Exactly the way I always operated. Allison hugged me first. You know, your trip to Hong Kong inspired me to start learning Mandarin. I downloaded the app already. I smiled, I expect to see your certificate when I get back. Zach scratched his head. I'm still stuck on Duolingo level 1. But I signed up for business courses at Santa Clara. This time, I won't drop out. I nodded. Good. My mother came last. She didn't hug me, just placed her hand lightly over mine. I won't apologize for the past. But I'm grateful you're letting me be part of your present. I didn't respond. Just gave her hand a quiet squeeze before stepping through security. In my business class seat, I opened my laptop and reviewed the schedule for my first week in the Hong Kong office. Meetings with the regional HR team, the Southeast Asia expansion launch, and a keynote speech for the International Investor Forum. Next to me sat a small photo Haley had secretly slipped into my suitcase. A picture of me standing in front of the lake house, sunlight glowing against my hair. Below it, she'd handwritten, "No one starts over alone. But only the brave choose to begin again." I leaned back as the plane began to roll. Behind me was a house that once marked the end of my childhood. Ahead was a place I could finally write the next chapter, without asking anyone's permission. A second chance doesn't come from being forgiven. It begins the moment you're strong enough to stop needing permission to be yourself. Nora's story is powerful proof that success isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your worth after years of being overlooked. In real life, many people have felt abandoned, dismissed, or treated as the outsider in their own families. But like Nora, when you stand up, take control, and set clear boundaries, you don't just earn back respect, you create a second chance. Not for the past, but for the future you choose to build. What are your thoughts on Nora's journey and the decisions she made? Share your reflections in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional, thought-provoking stories about life and family.
My name is Madeline Hart, 40 years old, currently living in Boulder, Colorado. In the world of personal finance across the Rocky Mountain region, my name isn't unfamiliar. After nearly 2 decades of dedication, starting as a data analyst at a small investment firm in Denver, I built Hart Advisory Group, a financial advisory practice serving clients in the tech and healthcare sectors. Our annual revenue crossed the $1 million mark 3 years ago, but none of that means anything to my family. To them, I'm not a capable, successful daughter. I'm simply a walking wallet. I'm the middle child of 3. My sister, Danielle, is always called the sunshine of the family, though she's currently working as a part-time teaching assistant at a community college while living with my mother. My younger brother, Lucas, was spoiled to the point that he still doesn't know how to wash his own t-shirt, and my parents, Charles and Susan Hart, treated my financial support for the family as a given, something I was expected to provide without thanks or acknowledgement. I used to believe that if I just worked hard and gave generously, love would naturally grow, but after 10 years of paying every bill, every loan, every non-repayable emergency support, I finally started to wake up. I still keep a detailed tracking sheet. As a finance professional, recording transactions is second nature. I didn't log them to get paid back. I logged them to remind myself when the draining began. Starting at age 30, I covered my parents' mortgage, $2,400 a month, for 2 full years because my dad was temporarily out of work due to health reasons. Every time my mom called, her voice carried a mix of anxiety and theatrical tension. "Madeline, if you can't help this month, I might have to sell my wedding ring just to keep the house." So I wired the money, every single time. No thank you, just the next request. Then came Lucas. First, $15,000 for an auto repair shop. 3 months later, it shut down because of unreliable business partners. I didn't complain. I wired another $9,500 for his digital content startup, which fizzled out after just 7 weeks. The third time, it was a $22,000 loan to open a coffee shop. The shop is still running, but I've never been invited to visit. Danielle always had reasons too: job loss, extra certifications, or needing a more reliable vehicle to commute. I paid $8,200 for her teaching certificate, $13,000 for a used SUV, and contributed $600 monthly until she got on her feet. It's been 7 years. On her feet remains a concept, not a reality. Her wedding last year, I was the sole financial backer. $18,000 for a farm-style ceremony near Longmont. No one in my family asked if I could afford it. My mom simply said, "You're the only one in this family with money. It's just expected." I used to stay quiet. I used to think that giving was how I proved my worth. But one evening, I looked at my financial summary, and the number staring back at me knocked the breath from my chest. $294,720. That's how much I had spent for them, for this so-called family, over 10 years. And the most painful part wasn't the money. It was the realization that no one had ever once asked if I was okay. No one remembered my birthday. No one visited me when I had knee ligament surgery. No one ever asked if I was living a happy life. They only called about bills, about a car getting repossessed, about tuition due next week, or some unexpected emergency. But never once did I get a call saying they were proud of me, or even just, "Thank you." That night, staring at that spreadsheet, one truth became painfully clear. I had never truly been seen as a daughter. I had only ever been a breathing credit card. And they never thought I might have limits. I began to realize that favoritism in my family wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a system deliberately upheld. As a child, I used to think my parents were just tired, distracted, or had forgotten. But as I got older, it became clear. I was being deliberately overlooked, while what they did for Danielle and Lucas was always proudly displayed. When I was 8, my birthday was held in our backyard with a simple chocolate cake my mom bought on clearance at Safeway. 6 balloons were tied to the wooden fence, and a few neighbor kids came only because I personally invited them. My mom was busy doing dishes, and my dad fell asleep on a lawn chair. No photos, no video, no birthday song. Just a single line from my mom. "You're lucky you even got a party. Don't ask for too much." But just 3 months later, Danielle's birthday was celebrated at a fancy Italian restaurant on Pearl Street. 16 guests, a 2-tier cake from a professional bakery, gifts spilling across the table. My dad stood up with a glass of wine and toasted proudly. "No one deserves to be loved more than this girl." I was 10 at the time. I sat quietly at the table in a hand-me-down dress from Danielle, doing my best not to cry as my dad spoke those words, like I didn't even exist. As for Lucas, the youngest, he was what my mom called our final little miracle. Every time he got into trouble at school, fights, skipping class, my mom would visit the principal with a homemade cookie box to talk it out nicely. Once, when I got a B in science for choosing the wrong project topic, my parents called it a lack of focus and grounded me from TV for a week. When Lucas was suspended for 3 days for breaking into the gym office, my mom insisted, "He's just energetic, not malicious." My dad nodded. Boys need to be a little wild to grow up right. In 7th grade, I won first place in the district speech competition. On the podium, I looked out into the crowd. No one from my family came. Later, I found out my dad took Lucas to a state basketball game because those tickets were hard to get. My mom had taken Danielle dress shopping for prom 2 months in advance. I studied like a machine, always top of my class. I was invited to speak at my high school graduation, but my family just texted, "Good job, keep it up." The real heartbreak came when I received an offer from Northwestern University with a partial scholarship. I was thrilled and ran downstairs to show my mom. She was on her phone, didn't even look up. "That school's too far. Why don't you go to the University of Colorado like your sister? It's cheaper and closer to home." I told her I had partial financial aid. She just shrugged. "Then figure out the rest on your own. We can't cover everything." That same summer, my dad withdrew money from his savings to help Danielle buy a new Toyota Corolla so she could drive to teaching jobs safely. She hadn't even secured a job yet, but was still called the hope of this family. I never asked for anything. I took out student loans, worked part-time at the campus library. Once, I had only $17 in my account and had to choose between putting gas in my car or buying groceries. Meanwhile, Danielle was posting photos from a Santa Fe vacation my parents had paid for to help her unwind after her first teaching exam. Update on Lucas failed out of his freshman year in college, but my parents rented him an apartment in Greeley so he could have space to think. When I questioned why I had to pay for everything while they spoiled the other two, I was labeled difficult. My dad once said to me when I refused to send Lucas more money, "You've never needed anyone to take care of you, so why be bitter toward those who do?" No, I wasn't bitter. I just saw it clearly. In this family, love was distributed like a risky investment. The more trouble you caused, the more love you got. By the time I turned 35, had my own firm, and bought my first condo in downtown Boulder, I sent a photo of it to the family group chat. No one replied. Danielle finally asked, "Is the living room big enough for us to crash over the holidays?" That's when it hit me. In their eyes, everything I'd built wasn't a source of pride. It was a resource to be accessed. And the moment I stopped giving, they called it betrayal. I started to see one thing clearly. The favoritism I once thought only existed in my childhood had never really stopped. It just changed form, changed tone, and became more subtle as I entered adulthood. At 32, I bought my first home in North Boulder, a 2-bedroom place with a balcony facing the Flatirons and a kitchen I had always dreamed of. Natural light, granite counters, and light cherry wood cabinets. I shared a photo in our family group chat with the caption, "Finally got a place to call my own." My mom replied 2 days later with a single word, Lucas didn't read it. Danielle responded a week later with a clapping emoji and added, "Hope the living room's big enough for the kids and Blake to stay over during the holidays." Less than a month after that, my parents called, voices tense like a fire alarm. "Madeline, your dad's hours got cut. I'm buried in credit card debt. Maybe you could help out a little." I asked how much a little meant. My mom said it casually. "Around $3,200 a month, just for a few months, until your dad stabilizes." Those few months stretched into almost 2 years. During that time, I covered the full mortgage on their old house in Lakewood, paid for the roof repair, and even the down payment on my dad's new car because the old one kept dying. Danielle wanted to pursue a master's in educational counseling. My mom called again, this time gentler. "She can't pass up this opportunity just because of money. It's $5,000 per semester. Don't you think sisters should support each other?" I agreed. 3 semesters, $15,000 total. Danielle never brought it up again. Not even to say thank you, let alone to pay it back. Then came Lucas. I don't know how he's always about to succeed. Every 3 months, there's a new breakthrough idea that urgently needs funding, and I'm the first and only person they think of. The first project was a custom athletic wear business. I wired $12,000 so Lucas could buy a heat press machine and rent a small studio in Arvada. 3 months later, I got news. The lease was terminated for missed payments. The machine had been pawned to pay the electric bill. Next came an app to connect pet lovers. I declined. My mom immediately called in tears. "Lucas has changed. He's working day and night on this. How could you crush your brother's spirit like that?" I transferred $9,500. I'm not sure what hurt more, losing the money or losing my belief that I was doing the right thing. And Danielle's wedding, a grand fall ceremony at a resort in Estes Park surrounded by crimson maple trees with a live band, vintage car, and a 3-course French dinner. I was the maid of honor and the main sponsor. Total cost? Over $26,000, not including the custom bridesmaid dress I had to pay for and the Vegas trip for her bachelorette party. When I refused to buy a flight ticket for one of her friends, Danielle pulled me aside and said, "You don't get friendship. Everyone thinks you're cold and no fun." I smiled faintly, maybe because I was the only one juggling a business barely surviving its first post-COVID year while also bankrolling the wedding of someone who didn't even remember my birthday. I began to realize I wasn't just being overlooked. I was being excluded from anything remotely emotional. That Thanksgiving, I found out the whole family had gone to New Orleans. Danielle posted pictures of seafood boils on a hotel balcony. Lucas uploaded selfies from the French Quarter. I wasn't invited. When I texted to ask, my mom replied, You're always so busy, I figured you didn't care for this kind of thing. I read that message over and over. Then I looked at my bank statement. 2 days before, there had been a charge of $7,800 on a credit card I co-signed. I called the bank. It was the hotel reservation at Bourbon and Ivy. Paid with my card, where my mom was the authorized user. No one asked, no one checked if I was okay or even present. They just needed me to fund it and disappear. There was a moment later that night, sitting alone in my stone-tiled kitchen, opening a bottle of Merlot I had been saving for something special, when I wondered, if I vanished from this world, would anyone in my family notice? And then I realized maybe they would, but only because they wouldn't know who would cover next month's bill. Last February, when Boulder was still blanketed in winter snow, my mother called me on a Monday morning. Her voice sounded different, sweeter than usual, soft, like she was folding buttercream into every word. Valerie, your father and I are about to celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary. I want to do something truly special. Don't you think our family deserves a proper party? I hesitated. 40 years is a long time, and despite everything, the daughter in me still held on to some hope of reconciling, even just a little. What do you mean? Like where? Lakeview Estate. You know, that new resort up in the southern mountains near Boulder? They have private banquet rooms overlooking the lake, decorated in rustic elegance. Just your dad's style. I already spoke to the manager. They need a deposit of $18,000 to hold the date. I almost choked. Mom, that's not a small amount. I know, she said, her tone dipping a bit. But you're the only one who can afford it. Lucas and Danielle are both struggling, and Madeline, you know, I don't ask you for much. I had already paid off their mortgage for nearly 2 years. I had funded my sister's wedding. I had bailed out every one of Lucas's failed ventures, but in my mother's memory, all of that seemed to register as just what daughters do. I looked at my computer screen, then replied calmly, "Have the manager contact me directly. I'll handle the deposit." 3 days later, an email from Lakeview Estate landed in my inbox. They confirmed I was listed as the primary payer for the event on April 19th. I transferred the funds that same day. $18,000 without negotiating, without attaching a single condition. I texted our family group chat. "I've made the deposit for Lakeview. Let me know if there's anything else I can help with." Danielle replied with a clapping emoji. Lucas said nothing. My mom messaged thanks. Now I can focus on planning everything. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time I'd get to be involved in the planning, even in some small way. 2 weeks later, I asked her, "Do you need help with the guest list or the menu?" "Oh, no need. You just focus on work. I know you're busy." I asked again, "Do we have the guest list yet? I'd like to dress appropriately." "I'll send it soon, but it's probably around 50 to 60 people, all family and close friends." But the list never came. Every time I brought it up, they either dodged the question or changed the subject. Danielle said, "Maybe Mom wants it to be a surprise for everyone. Don't worry." The week before the event, I called Mom one more time. "What should I wear? Should I come early to help with anything?" She chuckled lightly over the phone. "Wear whatever you want, just nothing too flashy. Anyway, I'm swamped. I'll call you later." Something felt off. That tone of everything's fine sent a chill down my spine. But I tried to reassure myself. I'm the one paying. There's no way they'd exclude me. I spent that Friday afternoon shopping for a gift, a pair of classic Raymond Vi watches, limited edition, genuine leather straps with custom engraved dials bearing each of their names. The total came to $5,200, not including the engraving fee or the custom walnut gift box. That evening, I sat in my living room wrapping the gift. Under the warm yellow light, the silver ribbon was tied neatly. I added a small card. "Happy 40 years together, Madeline." I truly believed that at least this time they would see me, not as a walking wallet, but as their daughter. April 19th in Boulder was so beautiful, it felt like a mockery. The sky was crystal clear, not a single cloud in sight, and soft sunlight filtered through blooming white plum blossoms. I arrived at Lakeview Estate at 4:30 p.m., a full 30 minutes early, according to the official invitation I never actually received. But I had paid the deposit. I was the sponsor of this event. My presence, at least in my mind, was unquestionable. I parked my Lexus neatly in the VIP lot. Stepping out, I held a silver-wrapped gift box, the navy blue ribbon gleaming under the sun. I wore a navy sheathed dress, elegant, understated, crystal-studded heels, hair in a low bun, makeup done lightly. It had taken me 2 hours to get ready, all for one simple hope: to be seen as part of this family. Just once. Lakeview was exactly as Mom had described it. Mirror-still lake, string lights cascading down stone walkways. I approached the check-in desk, smiling at a staff member in a black blazer holding a guest list clipboard. "Hi, I'm Madeline Hart. I'm here for the anniversary party of Mr. and Mrs. Charles and Susan Hart." She glanced down, quickly typed on her tablet, then her face froze. "I'm sorry, could you repeat your name?" I frowned slightly but kept my voice even. "Madeline Hart. Their daughter?" A pause. The young woman straightened awkwardly. "I'm very sorry, but your name isn't on the guest list. There may have been a mistake." My body went cold. "I paid the deposit for this event. I still have the confirmation email from your management." She looked flustered and quickly called for the event manager. While waiting, I peered through the tall glass doors leading into the main hall. Inside, golden lights glowed. I saw Danielle laughing near the wine table in a burgundy dress. Lucas stood by a group of friends, whiskey glass in hand. Everyone was relaxed, laughing, enjoying. I didn't see Mom. I didn't see Dad. Then the manager arrived, a tall, blonde woman in a beige suit with a name tag. Megan, event director. "Mrs. Hart, I understand there's been some confusion. You are indeed the one who paid the deposit. However, per the final guest list approved by the family, you were not included." It felt like the air had been pulled from my lungs. "I'm a daughter who paid $18,000 for this party. How am I not invited?" Megan looked sympathetic. "I'm not in a position to override the list. If you'd like, I can ask your family to speak with you." I nodded, gripping the gift box so tightly the silver paper crumpled. 5 minutes later, the doors opened. My father stepped out first, in a charcoal tuxedo with a sharp black bow tie. Mom followed behind, radiant in a silver gown. But there wasn't an ounce of warmth on their faces when they saw me. "Madeline," Dad said without a smile, "what are you doing here?" I choked back disbelief. "Are you really asking me that?" Mom folded her arms, face stiff. "We didn't think you'd come. You're always so busy." I raised the gift box, my hands still trembling. My mother's voice added, "I brought a present. I came to celebrate, and because I paid for this." Dad glanced around, then lowered his voice, icy and firm. "This is a private event. Not everyone belongs here. You should understand that." My mouth hung open, stunned. Mom turned away without meeting my eyes, her silence louder than any insult. Dad gestured to the security staff behind him. "Please escort her off the premises. We don't want a scene." I whispered, "Are you serious right now?" He stepped closer, voice like steel. "What's unclear? We don't have room here for someone who shows up to mooch off others. Get this leech out of here." A leech. I couldn't tell what hurt more. That word, or the way my mother stood behind him, arms crossed, saying nothing, as if I were some stain on their perfect evening. The security guard gently touched my elbow, polite but firm. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I didn't cry. Not right then. I just turned and walked, step by step, past rows of lavender, gift box still in hand, heart hollow. As the car door shut behind me, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to see the people who used to call themselves my family. I don't remember how I drove home that night. Everything felt like it was shrouded in fog, like watching a blurry film through rain-streaked glass, with the sound of wind howling past the car windows. The gift box was still on the passenger seat, its silver tissue wrinkled, smeared with mascara, because I had broken down the moment I left the Lakeview gates. When I got back to my apartment, the kitchen light was still on. I took off my shoes, dropped my purse on the floor, and collapsed at the foot of the stairs, as if my legs had forgotten how to hold me up. I had once hoped, once tried, once given them one more chance, and all I got in return were my mother's evasive eyes, my father's icy words, and a silent shove out of the very family I'd given everything to. About an hour later, the doorbell rang. It was Quinn, my best friend from college, the one person I could call in moments like this. I didn't have to explain anything over the phone. I only said, "I need you to come." And she came. Quinn took one look at me, mascara still smeared, dress wrinkled, face pale like sleep had long abandoned it. She said nothing, just stepped in and hugged me tight. "Talk to me, Madeline." And I did. I told her everything, every word, every look, every second of being thrown out of a party I paid for. When I got to the part where my dad called me a leech, Quinn's voice turned to steel. "No, this isn't favoritism anymore. This is abuse. It's humiliation." I nodded, though I still felt hollow inside. "Do you still have all the transaction records?" Quinn asked. I looked up and nodded. "Of course. I work in finance. I save everything." I opened my laptop and logged into my personal expense tracker. I had a folder named Family Support, which sounded far too gentle, considering the truth. I pulled up the report sorted by year, by recipient. The total appeared, $312,860.52. Quinn gave a low whistle. "Madeline, that's 3 full college tuitions, that's a house, that's someone's entire future." I stared at the rows of data, Lucas's car payments, Danielle's tuition, roof repairs, that New Orleans trip I was never invited to, then the $18,000 for the anniversary party, $5,200 for the luxury watch set still untouched in its box. Even the little expenses, string quartet for a wedding, flower arrangements, airfare for my sister's best friend whom I'd never met. Quinn was silent for a while, then said, "I think it's time to stop." I didn't have time to respond before my phone buzzed. A bank notification, $3,650. Luxury transportation service, charged to my card. Right then, the day after the party, I opened my banking app. It wasn't the only one. Another $2,800 for extra catering, $1,200 for a premium wine package, and $450 for a mobile photo booth. They were still using my card. After throwing me out of the party, they kept spending my money like nothing had happened. My hands gripped the edge of the chair, trembling. Quinn quietly placed a hand on my shoulder. "What are you going to do now?" I took a deep breath. "I'm canceling everything." That night, I stayed up until almost 3 a.m. I changed all my banking passwords, removed my parents and Lucas from every authorized user access. I emailed the bank to flag every suspicious charge and freeze all shared cards. Then I compiled a detailed report, a list of every expense, who it went to, when, and why. I attached receipts, emails, and bank statements. I didn't know yet what I would do with it, but I needed it as proof to myself that I wasn't crazy, that everything I remembered, everything I felt, was real. Finally, I drafted an email and sent it to all 3 of them. Starting today, I will no longer provide any financial support in any form. All credit cards, secondary accounts, and unused lines of credit have been canceled. Any future charges will be considered fraudulent activity. I am no longer this family's ATM. I hit send. The first feeling wasn't relief, it was emptiness. But then something strange happened. I could breathe. For the first time in years, I took a full, deep breath and didn't feel like I was choking. The next morning, before I could finish my first sip of coffee, the phone started ringing, non-stop. Mom called, Danielle called, Lucas left 3 missed calls and 2 all-caps texts. I set my coffee down, ignoring the blaring phone like a fire alarm. I knew the storm had come. Exactly as I expected. Less than an hour later, the doorbell rang, loud and urgent. Through the hallway glass, I saw my mom standing there, face flushed, clutching her handbag like she'd just come from battle. Behind her was my dad, rigid as a statue. and Danielle, arms crossed, eyes wide, as if she were the one who'd been betrayed. I opened the door. "Madeline, what is this about?" my mom demanded, skipping greetings, skipping everything. I stepped aside, letting them in. My dad didn't wait for an invite. He walked straight into the living room like it was his own. Danielle trailed behind, dragging the cold tension that always followed her. "You canceled everything? Disneyland, Jack's tuition, even Mom's joint account is frozen." "That's right," I said calmly. "And that's just the beginning." I walked over to the dining table, where I had already laid out a stack of printed papers, the spreadsheet I worked on last night. Each page was numbered, clearly listing recipient date, amount, purpose, and status. The last column was hand-labeled notes, with annotations like "not repaid," "unauthorized," "no notice," "used without consent." I slid the papers toward them. "This is every dollar I've spent in the past 11 years. Total $312,860.52. That's not counting interest or opportunity cost." My dad picked up a page, raising an eyebrow. "What's the point of this?" "To remind everyone I'm not an endless ATM." My mom winced. "You're making a big deal out of this. This is family, Madeline. In families, we support each other." "The port?" I raised an eyebrow. "Then name one time in the past 10 years when anyone supported me, asked if I was okay, or was it only ever about when the money was coming?" Danielle jumped in, her voice sharp. "You've always loved to control everything. Isn't that what this is? You like having power and now you're turning it around?" I met her gaze. "I didn't control, I rescued. You couldn't afford your wedding. I paid. You wanted a master's degree, I funded it. I never asked for repayment, never demanded thanks. And what did I get? A silent shove out of a family celebration." My dad slammed a page down. "Stop playing the victim. You knew what you were doing. If you didn't want to help, don't give money. Now you're coming back to throw it in our faces?" I took a breath, speaking slowly. "I said nothing for 10 years. I was patient, silent, hoping that if I kept giving, one day I'd be seen. But no, what I got was systemic exploitation. That's not love, that's financial abuse." The room fell silent. My mom froze. Danielle stared wide-eyed. My dad scoffed, but I caught a flicker of alarm in his eyes. "Starting today," I continued, "there will be no more joint cards. No more loans, no bill payments. I will no longer cover any expenses, medical, educational, or otherwise. Any future requests involving money will be denied." Danielle sprang up. "You're cutting us off? Who do you think you are?" "I'm the last person in this family who still understands what boundaries mean." My dad stood, his face crimson. "Selfish. This family raised you, and now you just walk away?" I looked him in the eye, no longer afraid. Family doesn't crush someone just because they make more money. Family doesn't call their daughter a leech and then spend her money behind her back. If this is the price of growing up, Hart, then I've already paid in full. I opened the door. "You can go now. I don't need explanations, and I don't owe anyone a damn thing anymore." My dad paused at the door, turned to look at me one last time. "You'll regret this." I didn't reply. I simply smiled and shut the door. For the first time, I heard the soft, solid click of the lock. I thought I would feel instant relief after that confrontation, but I didn't. The emotions came slowly, like when the body recovers from a fever. Chills, emptiness, and then, finally, calm. 3 days later, I cleared out the filing cabinet in my home office. Every printed bill, every receipt, every sub-account, I put them all into a large box labeled "closed." I didn't burn them, didn't shred them. I kept them not out of hate, but to remind myself that there was once a version of Madeline who believed family love could be bought with sacrifice. The following weekend, I received a strange letter. Not an email, but a handwritten note, sent through the mail, cream-colored envelope, neat handwriting. In the top left corner, "Margaret Albright, attorney at law." I frowned slightly. That law office was in Loveland, about an hour's drive from Boulder. I had never heard of it. When I opened the letter, I saw a folded sheet of paper and a bank statement. At the top was a line, "The final wishes of your grandmother, Mrs. Evelyn Monroe. Please find enclosed the separate inheritance that has been held in a trust account for the past 6 years." I collapsed into my chair. Grandma Evelyn, my mother's mother, the only woman in the family I ever felt safe around. She passed away when I was 34, during a colder than usual winter. I remember clearly, at the funeral, my mother told me not to give a eulogy because people will find it odd if you speak. My hands trembled as I opened the statement. The account held over $187,000, plus 6 years' worth of accrued interest. Attached was a handwritten letter from her, the paper yellowed with time. My dearest Madeline, I know you won't receive the love you deserve in this family. I've seen it for a long time, though I never dare to say it aloud for fear of causing division. To set aside a small fund kept in Attorney Margaret's care, with one condition. It would only be released when you had the courage to live true to your values. I believe that moment will come. And if you're reading this letter, it means you've already overcome the hardest part, standing up on your own. I held my breath the entire time reading, tears silently falling onto the edge of the paper. Holding that money in my hands, I didn't think about traveling or shopping. The first thing I did was establish a scholarship fund in her name, the Evelyn Foundation for Independent Youth. It supports young people rejected by their families, especially those who've been financially manipulated or denied education due to internal family reasons. I hired a team of lawyers and financial advisors to help structure the program. I wanted people like me, people once seen as the one who has, so must give, to know they still deserved a new chance. At the same time, I expanded my circle. Quinn had always been there, but now I welcomed others too. My former assistant, Jessica, a single mom juggling school and work, Henry, a chef who left home at 16 due to discrimination, and even a distant cousin named Rachel, who once quietly messaged me after the Lakeview incident saying, "I saw everything, and I support you." I invited them to dinner at my apartment each month. No one asked for money. No one complained. No one said, "Why won't you help me with this or that?" Just laughter, stories, and Henry's barbecue always gone first. That Christmas, I didn't receive a message from my parents or from Lucas or Danielle. I didn't send any either. I hung a wreath on my door, baked gingerbread cookies, and hand-wrote 12 cards for the people I invited to dinner. Not out of obligation, but because I was truly grateful for them. There's one thing I've realized. Sometimes you don't need to forgive the ones who hurt you in order to live well. You just need to stop, turn the other way, and rebuild your home with bricks you've chosen yourself. I am no longer the daughter of the Hart family. I am Madeline Hart, the woman who chose herself. And this time, I don't need anyone's permission to exist fully in my own life. Madeline's story is a powerful reminder that family bonds should never be built on unconditional sacrifice or silent endurance. In real life, many people remain trapped in toxic family relationships where love is traded for money and responsibility is twisted into a lifelong burden. Setting boundaries isn't betrayal, it's the first step toward protecting one's self-worth. Sometimes, real family isn't where you're born, it's who respects you for who you truly are. What do you think about Madeline's decision? Would you have chosen differently in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about family, boundaries, and freedom. My name is Riley. I'm 28 years old, and I live and work in Austin, Texas. I never thought I'd wake up in a stark, white hospital room, my legs braced in metal, with the beeping heart monitor being the only sound breaking the brutal silence. But what hurt more than broken bones, more than the incision across my abdomen, was my mother's breezy voice in the voicemail. "Hi, sweetheart, it's Mom. Your dad and I are already at the airport. We're about to board our flight to Florence with Connor. The doctor said you'd be in the hospital for a while, so we figured there's not much else we can do. Don't call us while we're in Europe. The roaming fees are too expensive. Get well soon. Oh, and thanks for the credit card. I used it to book the tickets. Ciao." I tossed my phone onto the hospital sheets. My hands were trembling, not from fever or pain, but because my heart had just been crushed. Just 2 days earlier, I was hit by a pickup truck that ran a red light while I was driving home from a late shift. I don't remember the impact, don't remember the blood or the sirens, just the operating room lights and the icy cold of the oxygen mask being placed over my face. I was unconscious for nearly 3 days. When I woke up, my whole body felt shattered. My legs were stabilized by titanium rods that stretched like railroad tracks. My lungs burned from fluid buildup. The doctors said I'd need at least 4 months to walk again, not to mention dozens of physical therapy sessions. I asked the nurse, "Where are my parents?" She hesitated. "They came by while you were still unconscious." They didn't leave a message. We tried to call, but we haven't been able to reach them. I tried calling. 3 calls. Each went straight to voicemail. It wasn't until the next morning that I saw the voicemail from my mom. A short, weightless message that cut through me like a razor blade. Connor, my younger brother, had always been treated like something fragile and precious. He dropped out of college, struggled academically, and at 25, still lived in my parents' basement, gaming and starting a business with the money I sent home every month. And me, a software engineer, financially independent since 21, still sending money back to help pay off their debts, their car, even my dad's golf club membership. Now they were in Florence, posing in front of the Duomo, eating pasta with $100 glasses of red wine, using the credit card I opened to book their business class tickets. Meanwhile, I was lying here alone without a single genuine check-in. The laughter in that voicemail twisted my stomach. My mother laughed, Connor laughed, and I swallowed my tears so the nurses wouldn't see how broken I really was. When Dr. Clara came in to check my vitals, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I broke down sobbing, my whole body shaking, and whispered like I was confessing a crime. They went to Italy, left me here. Clara set down the chart and sat beside my bed, her eyes darkening with disbelief. "I've been a doctor for nearly 18 years, she said quietly. "I've seen all kinds of families. Some camp out in hospital hallways for weeks. Some visit once and vanish, but leaving for Europe right after their daughter nearly dies? I've never seen that." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. And they said I'd be fine, because there are nurses here, because there's nothing else they can do. The air grew thick. I no longer felt the pain in my legs, only the weight pressing on my chest like something collapsing from the inside out. Outside the door, I heard a nurse's voice. "She's awake. I brought her breakfast." I turned my head away and wiped my face. I didn't want anyone to see me like that. But deep inside, I knew something with crystal clarity. I had been betrayed. Not by a sudden accident, but by the people I once called family. From the outside, my family always appeared polished and admirable. My father, James Whitaker, was the principal of a public high school in San Antonio. My mother, Lorraine, ran a small flower shop well known for her elaborate and artistic wedding bouquets. They showed up at every community event, always holding hands, smiling with neighbors, and never missed a Sunday church service. And me? I was the reliable daughter, the one who learned to cook dinner when mom was busy with orders, did her homework while dad lectured other teachers during dinner, and stayed silent whenever Connor was blatantly favored. I've never forgotten my 16th birthday. Mom promised to close the shop early and take me to my favorite restaurant for the first time in months. I sat in my new dress, waiting on the sofa for over 2 hours, until I got a blunt text. "Sorry, sweetheart, Connor just got called into a last-minute scrimmage. I can't miss it." I ate instant noodles, alone. The small birthday cake I had ordered from a local bakery still sat on the table, because I knew if I didn't take care of it, no one would. Connor is 3 years older than me. Tall, handsome, good at basketball, and terrible at everything else. He struggled in school, went through girlfriends constantly, dropped out of college during his first year because the environment wasn't right, and was always called a soul still finding his way by my parents. Meanwhile, I got into Georgia Tech on a full STEM scholarship. Mom once said, Of course you did well, but your brother is the one I really worry about. Dad used to tell neighbors, my daughter got hired by a major tech company in Austin, but he missed my graduation party. The reason? Connor lost his car keys and Dad had to drive 3 hours to Houston to pick him up. I learned not to expect anything. No one showed up at my academic awards ceremonies. No one picked me up after my wisdom tooth surgery. I got used to standing behind the camera, taking photos of Connor's medal ceremonies, then scrolling through them alone under the glow of my phone screen. After starting a job at a fintech company, I moved to Austin and handled everything myself, from rent to health insurance. Every month, I still sent at least $2,000 home, covering my parents' car payments, helping with household expenses, sometimes for house repairs, Dad's joint supplements, and startup money for Connor. The first time I sent money, Mom called crying. No one's ever helped me like you. I'm so grateful. I believed her. But the following calls turned into requests. The flower shop's slow this month. Connor needs a new camera for live streaming. Your dad missed his golf tournament. I kept sending. I tracked each payment in a color-coded Excel sheet. House, car, little brother, emergencies, and temporary, a column that never disappeared. On a rare visit home, I noticed a brand new TV in the living room with surround sound wired into the walls. Connor grinned. See this? It's our home theater setup. Your money really made it happen. I gave a crooked smile, gripping the arm of the couch. At that time, I was using a second-hand laptop I bought off Craigslist. I remember clearly the night before the accident, I called for the first time in my life and said, I need to cut back. I'm saving up to buy a house. I can't keep sending money forever. Mom went silent for 3 seconds, then started crying. Dad jumped in, voice sharp. What kind of person are you? We raised you for over 20 years, and now that we're older, you turn your back? Connor didn't say anything, just sent a shaking head emoji. I hung up. Empty, but oddly relieved. Relieved because I thought I had finally drawn my first boundary. And then, just 2 weeks later, I lay motionless in a hospital bed, while they were raising wine glasses in front of the Florence Cathedral. I scrolled past the photo Mom had posted before their flight. 3 plane tickets, booked a month earlier. They'd been planning this all along. And I was always the one left last. Nurse Riley knocked gently, carrying a tray of soup and juice. She looked at me and said slowly, You don't get to choose where you're born, but you can choose where you belong. I didn't respond. I just stared out the window. Rain had started to fall, and for the first time I knew I could never go back to the place I once called home. Not anymore. Not after everything. I started sending money home when I was just 24, a year after being promoted to lead engineer at Skylink Pay, a fast-growing fintech startup in Austin. A 6-figure starting salary might sound like a lot, but to me it felt more like a chance to repay my parents for raising me than an opportunity to enjoy life. At first, everything had a clear reason. The first month was to help my parents pay off an unsecured loan of nearly $12,000 they had taken out to repair the roof after a storm. My mom cried over the phone. If it weren't for you, I'd probably have to sell the flower shop. The next month, I covered 2 months of health insurance since Dad had just taken early retirement and lost his school-issued coverage. But after that, those temporary expenses started becoming the norm. I don't remember exactly when the monthly transfers became expected. It might have been after Mom called to say the air conditioner broke down, or when Connor wanted to start a handmade product business on TikTok and needed money for a camera. It opened a separate account and set up an automatic transfer, $3,000 for my parents, $1,500 for Connor, plus another $200 for unexpected costs. When there weren't any, they still spent it all. One month, I received a credit card bill with a charge from a car dealership in Dallas. They had placed a down payment on a brand new pearl white SUV that Mom called a reward for years of hard work. I don't recall ever agreeing to that reward, but Mom said, You don't need a new car, you live in the city. We need a safe vehicle to visit your grandma. I didn't know how to respond, other than paying off the remaining $12,000 to avoid losing the deposit. Connor was still bouncing between business ideas that I'd never seen produce a single dollar of profit. When I asked about the $2,000 investment I sent last month, he shrugged. Are you investing or auditing me? It's a startup. Maybe we lose money for a few years first. Once, I called Mom to ask why this month's expenses jumped by nearly $2,000. She said, your dad accidentally signed up for a premium golf membership. They won't let him cancel, but he deserves it, sweetie. Life's short, he has so few joys. That line, your dad deserves it, repeated itself every time I questioned an expense. When they installed a backyard pool, when they upgraded the sound system in the living room, when Connor upgraded his gaming PC, calling it a work tool. I kept a spreadsheet of every cost. $1,500 monthly for the house bills, $1,000 for the car, $2,500 for general living expenses, $500 for Connor's marketing course, and countless other odd charges. Roof repairs, new sofas, even dog food for the newly adopted purebred Pomeranian named Biscuit. Monthly totals often exceeded $8,000. One month, I sent as much as $9,400. When I asked if we could pause a few items so I could start saving to buy my own home, Mom sighed. You know your dad has high blood pressure, saying that might upset him. And Dad just texted, if you don't want to help anymore, just say it. No need for excuses. I was still living in a rented apartment, barely 700 square feet. My fridge was nearly always empty because I was too exhausted to cook. I declined every coworker gathering, afraid that using my personal card might throw off the family budget. I told Skylar, my college best friend, during one of her visits. She looked at the expense breakdown on my laptop and asked me bluntly, so if you got seriously sick, what do you think they'd do? I let out a bitter laugh. They'd worry. I mean, I'm still their daughter, right? She didn't say anything. She just gently closed the laptop and looked at me with quiet, heavy eyes. I sat in the car, hands still gripping the steering wheel even though the engine had been off for nearly 10 minutes. Inside the house ahead, the kitchen light spilled through the foggy window, casting the shadow of my mom flipping meat on a skillet. Connor sat in front of the TV, game controller in hand, feet propped on the table like he didn't have a single care in the world. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady as I walked into the house. I need to talk. My dad, James, looked up from his newspaper, voice heavy. What is it, another emergency expense? No, the opposite. I want to reduce the monthly support. No one said a word, just the crackling sound of oil in the skillet. I went on. I can't keep sending $8,000 every month. I need to save for a home, for my own future. I'll still help, but more reasonably. In 3 months, I'll cut it in half. Then after that, it'll depend on actual needs. My mom put down the skillet and turned around. She didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then the tears came, like they had been waiting. You don't love us anymore, Riley. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'd expected this reaction, but it still hit hard. It's not that I don't love you, but... Then why, my mom cut in, when you were little, I skipped lunch just to buy you a new gym outfit. Your dad drove 3 hours every week just to bring you home for the holidays. Now that you've made it, you want to liquidate your duty as a daughter? Lorraine, let her speak, my dad said through clenched teeth, though he didn't look at me. He was gripping his coffee mug tightly. Connor stood up from the couch, headphones still on. His voice came from across the room. You're the type who kicks down the ladder once you've climbed up. Connor, I turned to him. You don't do anything. You don't work, don't study, don't pay a single bill. I can't keep supporting you like a child. I'm your brother, Connor shouted. You once said family comes first. What now? Your money matters more than us? Dad stood up, voice low but firm. You live alone in the big city, high salary, no family, no kids. Why suffer over sending a little money back? Or are you planning to move to some luxury neighborhood and cut ties with us altogether? That's not it, I heard myself almost pleading. I just want some financial safety. Every month, I only keep enough for rent and food. Everything else goes into this house. I'm exhausted. My mom collapsed into a chair, face in her hands. Her voice came out choked. "You're this family's only hope, Riley. If you abandon us now, how is that different from pushing me into a pit?" Dad just shook his head, voice bitter. "Fine, no pressure. Cut it all off starting next month. Keep your money and build that dream castle of yours. Doesn't matter how your mom survives." Connor slammed his door, yelling, "When you need us, don't call." I stood frozen in the living room. No one looked at me. No one asked why I couldn't sleep, why I worked late, or why I skipped vacations out of fear I wouldn't have enough to send. No one asked if I was lonely. Just accusations, like I was the traitor for wanting to keep a small piece of my own effort. I turned and left. No dinner, no more words. As I closed the car door, I saw my mom through the kitchen window. She was wiping her face, then quietly picked up her phone. I couldn't tell if she was texting someone or opening the banking app to check my account one last time. I started the engine. My chest felt lighter, but not at peace. I didn't cry, but inside the emptiness spread, like a patch of forest after wildfire. The trees weren't completely dead, but there were no more leaves. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "I'm sorry if I hurt you, but if you think money can buy peace, then you don't understand family at all." I placed the phone on the passenger seat. Didn't open it again. Didn't reply. That was the first night I didn't log into the bank app to check the family account balance. It was also the first night I began to think about two words: cutting ties. On Wednesday afternoon, 5 days after the accident, I was finally allowed to sit up with the help of an adjustable wedge pillow. The lower half of my body was still numb from medication, but my mind was clearer. Clear enough to realize I was lying here alone, while my parents and brother were likely settled somewhere in Europe. I unlocked my phone for the first time since regaining consciousness. In the saved voicemails folder, I found a cheerful message from my mom. "We're at the airport now, about to fly to Florence with Connor. Don't call, roaming charges are expensive. I know you'll be fine. The doctor said you'd be in the hospital for a while, so we figured we might as well take advantage of summer break. Oh, your visa still works. Use it to book the tickets. Thanks, sweetheart. Ciao." I had never felt so humiliated in my life. They hadn't just abandoned me. They used my money to do it. I opened my banking app for the first time in months. My hand trembled slightly as I typed in the password. Every transaction made while I was unconscious appeared clearly, like being slapped in the face with receipts. June 11th, just 2 days after the accident. There was a charge for $15,292 at Bella Via Travel Services. The note read, "Full payment for 3-person Italy tour, business class upgrade." I went still. While I was receiving an emergency blood transfusion, they were finalizing luxury flight upgrades for their dream vacation. And it didn't stop there. 3 more charges followed. $750 at Sandro Milano, a high-end fashion brand. $920 at Florence Vespa Rentals. $1,180 at Ristorante Aurelio rooftop booking. No check-in calls, no asking for permission. I opened Facebook and typed in Florence and Mom. Within seconds, I found a post she had shared with friends-only privacy. 3 of them, smiling brightly in front of the Duomo, holding gelato cones. The caption read, "A well-deserved vacation after years of sacrifice. Grazie, Florence." Beneath it was a comment from Connor. "Thanks to the Bank of Riley for funding our soul-healing journey." Followed by a laughing emoji and a heart. I bit my lip so hard it bled. I kept scrolling. A post from 3 weeks ago in the family group chat, Whitaker Home update, read, "Florence, here we come. As long as Riley doesn't cut off this month's allowance, we're covered. A farewell summer gift." They'd planned this. And when I said I wanted to reduce my financial support, they weren't hurt. They were afraid it would ruin their Italy trip. Miss Riley entered the room, carrying a food tray. She paused when she saw my pale face. "Riley, what's going on?" I didn't answer. I just held up my phone to show her the photo of my mom trying on Gucci sunglasses, captioned, Italian summer shades worth every penny of my daughter's. Riley exhaled and set the tray down. She sat on the edge of my bed. They used your money? I nodded, then whispered, barely loud enough for even me to hear. I'm lying here with broken bones, internal bleeding, and doctors unsure if I'll walk again. And they're out there enjoying pasta while I can't even get to the bathroom on my own. My voice cracked. My throat tightened. Riley gently took my hand and squeezed. She didn't say a word. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the tears, but they came anyway. Not from pain, but from the collapse of everything I had built. My image of a decent family, one that loved each other even through disagreements, shattered in under 10 minutes of scrolling through transactions. No one had forced me to sacrifice this much. I chose to. I believed if I gave enough, they would love me the way they loved Connor. And now, in the sterile hospital room, I finally saw the brutal truth. I was never a priority. I was just the most reliable financial resource they ever had. I thought I would spend the next few weeks in silence and solitude, like a shadow the world had forgotten. But strangely, the emptiness my family left behind wasn't a dead space. It became a place for others to step into. Riley, my morning nurse, was the first. Unlike the others who passed by with a routine everything okay, she stayed. She didn't ask out of politeness. She asked because she genuinely wanted to know. She shared that she'd served as a military nurse in Afghanistan and had seen terrible things. Enough to recognize pain that hides behind silence. Emotional wounds linger longer than physical ones, she said once while changing my bandages. And you, Riley, are hurting in both places. Riley started bringing me little things, a cup of homemade chamomile tea, an unscented lip balm because she knew I hated chemical smells. One day, she brought a worn-out book, To Kill a Mockingbird, from her father's shelf, saying it helped her through post-war depression. I read every word as if it had been written for me. But it wasn't just Riley. My primary physician, Martinez, a Mexican-American woman in her 40s with a voice warm as hot cocoa, began stopping by even outside her rotation. One day, she brought a small box of corn cakes her mother had baked and smiled. For my most special patient. I also had a roommate, Miss Eleanor, 65, recovering from a bathroom fall and a fractured hip. At first, I thought she was aloof, always wearing sunglasses and listening to opera, but on the third night, when I broke down crying, she pulled off her headphones and simply asked, "Need someone to sit with you?" From then on, each afternoon while I struggled to lift my legs off the bed and practice walking, Miss Eleanor sat by the chair, holding a tiny stopwatch, counting how many seconds I could hold my stance. "Every step is a victory," she often said. "No one, not even family, gets to take that from you." Even Leroy, the janitor, over 60 with silver hair close to his scalp, knocked on my door every morning with a toothless grin I'd come to look forward to. "Did Riley win today?" he'd ask. He had a habit of sneaking a mint onto my medication tray like he was gifting the queen. They didn't have to be kind to me. None of them owed me a thing. But they came, one by one, as if the universe was trying to fill the void my family left behind. A week later, Riley brought in a small card and placed it on my table. "Family isn't blood. Family is who stays when you fall apart." Beneath it were handwritten names: Riley, Eleanor, Dr. Martinez, Leroy. I touched the card, my heartbeat finally slowing. That night, I opened my phone again. No new messages from Mom, no missed calls from Dad or Connor, but I no longer expected any. Instead, I texted Riley. "Will there be chamomile tomorrow? I think I'm addicted." A minute later, she replied, "Bringing ginger cookies too. You might fall apart, but your taste buds never do." I laughed. For the first time in weeks, it wasn't bitter. It was real. I looked up at the hospital ceiling. It didn't feel cold anymore. Because finally I understood. I wasn't alone. And sometimes family is rebuilt from broken pieces, with the quiet kindness of strangers. 4 a.m. I woke up from a sharp pain in my left hip, but this time I didn't press the morphine button. Instead, I turned on the nightlight and opened my laptop. Tonight, I didn't want to go numb. I wanted to feel everything, both the pain and the growing determination in my chest. It was time to reclaim what was mine. I started by calling Ava, an independent financial advisor Riley had recommended. She used to be an auditor at a national bank with a voice that was sharp but strangely empathetic. Really, the first thing we need to do is take back full control of your financial system. Who currently has access? My mom. And Connor. Do they have legal power of attorney? No, I only gave them my passwords because it was easier to track the bills. Good. That means they don't have legal authority, which means we can act immediately. Within 3 hours, Ava helped me shut down all my old bank accounts and opened 3 new ones at a different bank. With higher security, 2-factor authentication using a separate device. I changed every password, from banking to digital payment systems and all linked crypto wallets. Next came the credit cards. I called the hotline, listed every transaction from the past 45 days, and requested a card freeze, opening a fraud investigation into the card used to pay for the Florence trip. Will they be investigated? I asked, my voice no longer steady. They'll be required to explain, the call agent replied coolly. And with the evidence you've provided, the bank may escalate this to civil authorities if needed. I paused, took a deep breath, then continued calling the power company, the internet provider, the auto insurance, the health insurance, every service, registered in my name but serving the house in San Antonio, and canceled each one. I called the car dealership I was financing 2 vehicles through, an SUV for Dad, a sporty sedan for Connor. I didn't want to keep anything. Can you arrange a repossession? I asked. As long as the contract is in your name. It is. I'm the sole signer, and I want to sever every tie to them. Each call was a cut. Each service cancellation confirmed pulled me further from the shadow I'd lived in for the past 6 years. By noon, Riley stepped into my room with 2 cups of peppermint tea and a surprised look when she saw me still sitting upright at my laptop. Planning a coup? No, I smiled faintly. I'm reclaiming my territory. I wasn't done. I called the airline using the booking confirmation from an old email account my mother had mistakenly accessed. 3 round-trip tickets from Florence to Dallas, business class. I canceled them, got the refund sent to my new account, and added a note to the booking file. Transaction made without account holder's consent. You're leaving them stranded, the customer service rep asked softly. No, I'm letting them pay for themselves, for the first time in their lives. That afternoon, Riley called her brother Derek, who had an old but sturdy pickup truck. The 3 of us planned a little visit to the old house. The hospital agreed to discharge me for the day as long as I had transport and mobility support. I sat in a wheelchair, holding a list of personal items still locked away in my parents' house. My college savings book, my grandmother's necklace, my birth certificate, old family photos, and even the first sketch I ever drew at 10. Something my mother once called useless but worth keeping. The San Antonio house wasn't locked. Security cameras were off. I used my old key and stepped in like a guest, retrieving stolen fragments of my life. We took nothing but what was legally mine. Riley had printed the list, and I checked off each item like I was scanning groceries. Derek gasped when he saw the gaming PC Connor had set up in the living room, still in its original packaging, marked Riley's card, thanks Sid. I didn't smash anything, didn't write on the walls, didn't leave behind rage. I just stuck a post-it note on the fridge. I'm no longer your sponsor. Please find another way to live. We left just as the sky turned dark. We took no vengeance, only clarity. At 2 a.m., I knew they were back when the phone rang. The screen said, Mom Cell, a number I hadn't blocked, just monitored. I didn't pick up. 10 minutes later, the messages flooded in from Mom, Dad, Connor. First came the anger. You think this is funny? We're stranded at the airport with declined cards. How dare you? And the threats. You cut us off financially. You cut us off for good. I'll never forgive you. We'll sue you. And finally, the emotional manipulation I knew too well. Mom's blood pressure spiked. She cried in Florence, because of you. Connor has nowhere to stay if you took the car. Moved them all to a separate folder. I didn't reply. 3 days later, the hospital informed me that 3 people were at the front desk asking to see Riley Whitaker. No appointment. No flowers either. I looked at Riley, reading beside my bed. She closed her book and asked gently, "Want me to stay?" I nodded. "You're the only family I have left." My parents entered the room, faces flushed with fury. Connor followed, still sunburned, clearly straight from the beach. They froze, seeing Riley sitting there calm, like she belonged. Mom spoke first. "Do you even realize what you've done? Abandoning your family mid-trip? Humiliating us in front of friends? Stealing family money." I looked straight at her, no trembling this time. "No, I just took back what was mine." Dad slammed his hand against the window. "You're acting like a stranger. No warning, no notice. How is this not just throwing us out on the street?" "It's different," I said. "You still have a home, just not one I'm paying for anymore." Connor jumped in, snapping, "You ruined everything. If you didn't want me, fine, but you took the car. You want me to walk?" "You're 25, Connor. You can work. You can buy your own car. I don't owe you a sandwich, let alone a sedan." Mom began to cry. Not shock tears, but what I used to call her emotional weaponry. "Don't agree with you." "I don't understand. I love you, Riley. Families where we lean on each other. How can you push me to the edge like this?" I leaned over and picked up the envelope I'd already prepared. "These are the terms if you still want to be in my life." Dad opened it, flipping through the pages. 3 items. No financial support in any form. Contact only with prior consent. If boundaries are violated, contact ends completely. "Is this a contract?" Dad sneered. "The boundary," I replied. Mom crumpled the envelope. "I won't sign. I won't accept this. You're no daughter of mine." Connor threw the car key card onto the table. "Go live with your nurse." They left. Slammed the door so hard the vase shook. I sighed. Not from pain, just relief. Riley sat beside me again, saying nothing, just holding my hand tightly. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. They don't control anything anymore. For the first time in my life, I get to choose. 3 weeks later, I was discharged. Riley picked me up in her brother's borrowed SUV, the trunk packed with soft bedding, a lumbar pillow, and a small sign, "Riley's New Journey." I moved into Eleanor's apartment, the elderly woman I'd shared a hospital room with, who insisted on charging a symbolic rent. Every morning, Riley drove me to physical therapy. Every night, I read by the window, slowly learning to stop checking anyone's bank account but my own. One evening, Riley asked, "If you could go back, would you change anything?" I shook my head. No. Because if none of it happened, I wouldn't know what home really means. She smiled. Then welcome home. Riley's story is a powerful reminder that love does not mean unconditional sacrifice. In real life, some families build relationships on dependency and manipulation, turning the kindest person into a silent victim. But when we dare to set boundaries, when we reclaim ownership of our own lives, it's not betrayal. It's a courageous step toward healing. Because sometimes true family is found in the kindness of someone we least expect. What do you think of Riley's choice? If you were in her shoes, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.